Welcome to the ultimate guide to slow living. Whether you're new to slow living or you want to deepen your practice, this deep dive masterclass combines the best tips, strategies, and truths from my slow living series into one comprehensive guide. This video is packed with actionable steps and insights to help you on your journey to embracing a more intentional way of living. Let's get started. So, you may have heard a bit about slow living. You're not quite sure what it is. You've been seeing a lot of photos of people on the countryside, making bread, really detached from the modern world, or really just very aesthetic. Lots of people making coffee. And that can look like slow living for some people. It doesn't look like slow living for me because every single person has their own version of slow living because we just want to live a life that is aligned with our values. Slow living is all about creating and building a meaningful life, being intentional with what you're doing and the choices you make, and really putting focus on what's most important to us. But in order to actually know what's most important to us, we kind of need to know what we value. And many of us can think that we know what our values are. I know for a long time, I thought I knew what my values were. My values were family and friends, and that's what I thought my value was. But I was overworking myself. I was not spending enough time with my family, and I was really disregarding the things that I called my values. And what happens when we don't live a life that is aligned with our values is that we feel really disconnected. And that's when we can often feel stress and burnout and just unhappiness. And so, was my value family time? It was. It really was. But I wasn't living that way. I was living as if my value was, achievement and career. And so, when I actually switched and pivoted to slow living and truly lived my value of family, then I felt really content. I felt purposeful. I felt peaceful. And so thinking you know what your values are isn't enough. We really need to evaluate what they are and if you're living them and how we want to implement them in your day to day. Because values, honestly, will dictate your decisions in life, your choices that you make, what you say yes to, what you say no to. That's why I say it's the foundation. It's the most important part. So now that we've discussed how important values truly are, let's start the process of discovering your values. And I'm going to give you some prompts to try out, and I'd encourage you to maybe pause this video, write them down, or maybe at the end of the video, write them down, but really give yourself space and time to actually engage with these prompts. The first prompt I want you to engage with is to think about a time in your life when you felt truly connected to yourself. You felt you were truly living your true self, your true life. You felt content and you felt alive. And what were the feelings other than that you were experiencing? Who were you with? What were you doing? This is usually a first indicator of the things that truly fill your cup. And it might be something like what I had and kind of why I'm doing YouTube now, where when I was in 11th and 12th grade, I used to love making videos at the end of the year, just putting photos together and putting little transitions and stuff like that. I just could spend hours doing that. And I just felt so creative. I don't know, it was just awesome. And I kind of pushed it aside because, like, what am I going to do with that? I'm going to build a job around it? No, it wasn't something that I was going to do at that time. I couldn't even foresee that. And now here I am on YouTube making videos. So I do have a certain value of creativity and of self-expression. So start thinking about what some of your values could have been during that time. Prompt number 2, think about a time when you felt completely disconnected from yourself. You felt misaligned. Your values in that moment were not being respected. How were you feeling? Who were you with? What was going on? It might be for me, for instance, I was in maybe a job that didn't align with the values that I wanted to really live. So a lot of my jobs required me to work weird, strange hours and on-call schedules and all that, which obviously don't align with the life that I want to live of really prioritizing my family. So think about times where you felt completely disconnected. It might be times in your life where you felt extremely stressed and burnt out and just uncomfortable in your own skin. So start thinking about moments in your life like that, because those also can show you your values, because your values were not being respected during that time. And then prompt number 3, I'd recommend maybe going online and looking for lists of values, or you can think of your own. And I want you to just start writing down all the values that you hold. And so, for instance, it might be creativity, it might be family, it might be achievement, it might be freedom. So write them all down. And then I want you to pick out 5 to 10 values that are most present for you, that really speak to you the most. And then, if possible, what I like to do with my clients often is have them rate those values. So, from the most important to the least important. And that'll give you a clear indication of what you value most and in what order. So, for instance, if I value family, but I also value career, they can be very contradictory values, because I might spend less time in my career to really spend time with my family, or vice versa. And I do kind of value both, but family comes first. So when I have the choice between the two values, I always pick family first. And so it's important for you to know what the hierarchy of your values are, because that is really a determinant in what you say yes to and what you say no to. If you're enjoying this video so far, I'd encourage you to hit the subscribe button and join the community, because I make videos every week and I would love to connect with you. So now that you've identified your values, it's time to actually put them in action. And I have a couple of prompts for you again. So one is, I want you to imagine your ideal day. What does that look like to you? Who are you with? How are you feeling? How are you living your values? So if your value is family, are you spending the day with your family, for instance? Or what activities are you doing? If you're really value creativity, are you creating things? Are you actually living out those values in your day-to-day life? So envision what that life would look like. The second prompt is to really evaluate the life that you have now. How are you spending your time? What are you doing? Are you saying yes to things you don't want to say yes to? Are you committing to things that really don't light you up and aren't of value? Are you currently living a life that is aligned with the values that you've noted? Or are there spaces in your schedule and in your life that can be removed in order to have a more value-based life? For instance, I had to remove unnecessary meetings with networking groups because a lot of them were in the evening and I wanted to prioritize my family time. So that's a space where I was like, okay, this way of living is not aligned with my values. I'm going to remove it and make space for what does align with my values. The third prompt, which is actually a point rather than a prompt, is just to really take your time. Again, be intentional and do things incrementally. Don't make all the changes all at once. Do so slowly. Say no to something, prioritize something, reflect before you make decisions, and just really be intentional. And it is a journey. Like, I've been on this journey for about more than a year, and I'm still learning and I'm still adapting and I'm still fighting bad habits. And so please don't expect an overnight phenomenon to happen. It's really more sustainable if you do it slowly. The first tip is really being mindful in the morning. The morning, those first 20 minutes, really dictate how your day is going to unfold. I think if you start the day off on the right foot, that's the best scenario. And I debated if I should create a video all about my morning routine, but I don't have one. I think what's more important is that you use the morning to really be intentional and reflective of the type of day you want to spend. And how I do that is by adding a lot of buffer time in my mornings. So I have a toddler and she has daycare and I have work. And so you can imagine that getting her out the door sometimes is a struggle. And kids are the best teachers of slow living because they are slow and they drag their feet and they don't want to go places. But what we have done is we've created a lot of buffer time. So when she wakes up and she's a little bit like tired and drowsy, well, then she can come and cuddle with us while she like eats a little bit. And then we can play while we're getting ready to get dressed. And we have little peekaboos when we're saying goodbye. And so I've really slowed down the morning process instead of rushing out the door. If you want to build a routine, that's cool. You can do that. Routines have never worked for me. They cause me more stress than anything else, but I've heard a lot of people say that routines really work for them. So if that works for you, perfect. But please, it's not perfection. Don't aim for perfection. I don't need you to be drinking a certain number of cups of water and this, that, and the other. Just whatever feels right for you. And if that's sitting on the couch with a glass of water looking outside, before getting ready, then that's what that is. But slow it down in the morning. That will set you up for the rest of your day. The second tip I have is really about learning to say no to things. We often just say yes to everything, to commitments, to whatever, and we fill up our days with things that aren't even important to us. And if you know your values and you know what's important and you know what takes priority, then you also recognize that you're going to have to say no to things. And saying no is super powerful because by saying no, you're protecting your time for something else, for what's truly important to you. And the act of saying no should be seen as self-care. And it can be done super tactfully without hurting anybody's feelings. I'll be creating a video all about how to say no, but learn to say no. Be comfortable with saying no. Practice it as much as you can. That is like a really important tip. So the next time you feel pressure to say yes to something, take a step back and question, is this actually aligned with the life I want to live? Is it aligned with my values? Is it going to take time out of something else that I truly want to be doing? And so before you say yes, it's there's this book called Essentialism, and they say it's the slow yes and the quick no. So you can say no really quickly, but if you're going to say yes, really reflect before you say yes. The third tip is to take breaks so that you can check in with yourself. Sometimes we're such a go, 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 go society that we forget that we can actually stop. I remember in jobs, I would like not take my breaks, not take my lunch. And if I did take my lunch, I would just be thinking about work or doing work while doing something else. And that's not great because if you never stop to actually reflect on what you're doing, then you won't really recognize if you're living a life that you want to live. I've heard stories of people who were like stopped one day because they burnt out or they had a medical issue. And they were like, man, I've been staying on this job for 20 years and I don't even like this job, but I was too busy to recognize that I wanted to be out of this job. And please don't let that be you. So learn to take breaks to check in with yourself, reflect on how you're doing, how you're feeling, and trust those instincts. Just listen to yourself. We don't listen to ourselves enough, and I think that's why a lot of us have so many issues, right? It's our body yelling at us like, something's not right, listen to me. So take breaks and listen to what your body's telling you. And if your body needs rest, please take that rest. Tip number 4 is accepting imperfection. Perfection doesn't exist, and life is imperfect, and honestly, imperfection is beautiful. And if we wait for perfection, we'll never make any strides forward. So for me, for instance, you would not be watching this video right now if it wasn't for me trying to accept imperfection. I've had this series idea for a while now, and I've been just too scared to actually sit down and try and film something really structured and like a talking head, like a real video, whereas the other ones, maybe I'm just talking and I'm like, oh, if I'm just doing it haphazardly and it sucks, it's because I wasn't really trying. But now I'm trying. And so now that I'm trying, I am aware of how imperfect this video is and how imperfect all of my videos are. And it makes me not want to create because I have a vision in my head that I know I can't realize on camera at this stage of the process. But I mean, yeah, I'm not going to be perfect. But if you're watching this and you're still here, maybe you're resonating with a bit of my imperfection, a bit of the way that I am. Maybe you see yourself within me, and hopefully what I'm sharing with you has some value. And so imagine if I didn't do this video. Imagine if I didn't do any of my videos. If you found any value in any of my videos, if I had just not embraced imperfection, there'd be nothing. And I wouldn't feel like the feelings I have from creation. So embrace imperfection. Perfection doesn't exist. And we want to see the true you. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be you. That's all you ever need to be, is just you. And just being you is enough. Just being you is everything, honestly. Next is give your brain a break. Your brain is so tired. My brain is so tired. We work hard, we take care of other people, and then when we do have rest times, we tend to try and fill it with productive work, like taking care of the house, of chores, or maybe of like doom scrolling, which is like my thing that I do sometimes is I doom scroll because I just want to like not be alone with my thoughts and instead just keep myself occupied. And that's obviously not healthy. Our brains need time to shut off. And if you can recall when you were younger, and I think a lot of my viewers are around my age, I'm 31, and when we were kids, like we didn't have that much technology, right? If we were at the doctor's office and the doctor was running late, we'd be counting the ceiling tiles. I would daydream, I would watch the clouds and make up stories in my mind. And I don't do that as much anymore because I have so many distractions. And yet, when I do allow myself to turn that brain off, it feels so good. And so it's a practice, it's very difficult and it's very uncomfortable because you might be faced with thoughts that you don't want to face, but you need to let go sometimes. You need to turn it off and rest. Rest is productive and it's so important. So very important. Next one is go outside, get some fresh air, have the sun on your skin. Now, a caveat. I live in Canada and winters are crazy cold and not fun and it's dreary and this, that, and the other. And I get that. And it's like always my excuse of like, I don't want to go outside because it's cold and snowy. But we do need to try and make all weather be good weather, except all weather. Like I've been trying to take my daughter out to play even when it's raining. And she really enjoys it. And I was enjoying it too. And nature is so important. I think what happens is we get so trapped into our homes. Most of us have air conditioning systems. We don't open the windows even. But get outside and nature is so healing for the soul. It really slows us down. It's good for our mental health. It's been shown. And it's such a reminder to us to live in the present moment. You know, it's truly grounding. So please get outside as much as you can. I'm going to try and work on it too. I think I'm going to create a shorts walking series for this fall. I don't know, a thought. Next is find the joy in the everyday. Often I hear from my friends, my clients, and myself that every day just feels the same like the last. It's mundane, it's boring, there's nothing new. But I wonder if it's because we were like really just living on autopilot. And what would happen if we truly found joy in the present moment in every day. So a silly example would be our grass grew fairly long because we didn't cut it, and I was playing with my daughter in the yard, and we were finding little flowers, and we were picking them, and we just had fun picking them all. And then I put them in a little vase, and that just made me so happy. I do that often when the grass overgrows and the little flowers come in, and it makes me all giddy to like place them all and arrange them. And that's just me finding joy in everyday things, or baking cookies, or just playing with my daughter. And I think what happens is if we live our life on autopilot, we don't see all these beautiful opportunities for joy and connection and contentment. So if you're aware more of what's going on, you can be more able to find the joy in the everyday. It's all around you. I swear it, you'll start noticing it. So think about how you can start embracing the joy of the everyday. And the last tip I have, which this one has been super crucial for me in my journey, is creating boundaries with myself. I really work well with strict boundaries. They are a form of self-care for me. And so I need to know when my hours are to see clients, or else I will be a bleeding heart and see clients all the time, whenever. And so my boundaries might include creating space for quiet time. And so if it's between working on something or rest, I reflect. And if I'm feeling tired, I will take that rest. That takes priority. Or it's limiting screen time. It's not overcommitting by saying no. Like, these are boundaries that I've had to protect my time, protect my energy. I know what my limits are. They're set in stone, and it makes it so much easier for me to say no when I know what my limits are. Because it's like I'm seeing a friend this evening, for instance, and I told her, well, my daughter goes to bed at 6:30, so I'm free after 6:30. Could I have gone to see her earlier? Yeah, but I don't want to start overcommitting out like over the time that I could be with my daughter. So I'm seeing her after 6:30. Was it an issue? No, it wasn't an issue, not whatsoever. And it wasn't difficult for me to communicate that, or to decide that that was my limit, or to communicate that limit. So create boundaries for yourself that are meaningful and protect your time, your energy, and also are in line with your values. There is a difference between a full life and a busy life. A busy life looks like commitments, obligations, endless to-do lists, and just anything that truly drains your energy. Whereas a full life looks like making time for what truly matters, being intentional, and really being thoughtful and meaningful, and making sure that what you're choosing is aligned with your values. And I don't know about you, but I would prefer having a full life than a busy life. But if you want that, you need to learn to say no. You need to say no so that you can prioritize what truly matters to you. There's a lot of power in saying no. It's not just about turning something down, but rather about protecting your time and your energy so that you can focus on the things that are truly of value to you and matter most. And I get it, it's hard to do. We're in a society that kind of promotes just being nice and saying yes, and a lot of us can be yes people. I know I was a yes girl, but that way of living doesn't serve you. And so we need to look at approaching these situations in a different way. In order to approach your life in a different way, you need to figure out what's noise and what's essential. We live in a world that's really fast, tons of commitments coming up, requests. It can be hard to know what's just noise and what is essential that you want to spend your time on. And that's where kind of slow living comes in, because slow living helps you identify what is of value, and it really cuts through the noise so that you can pick out the commitments and obligations that fill your cup and give you energy rather than drain you. By engaging in slow living, you are better able to slow down the decision process by asking yourself really important questions like, what truly adds value to my life? What aligns with my core values? This is really the most essential piece because everything else pulls you away from your authentic self. But I know that can be really up in the air, and I want to give you concrete strategies that you can utilize to better say no and set boundaries. The first step is knowing your values. You truly need to know your values so that when a request comes in, you can determine if that request is aligned with your values. And once you have your values as a guiding map, it's easier to say no because you can confidently say no, knowing that you're doing so in your best interest. You're doing so because it's aligned with your priorities. You're doing so because it aligns with the life that you want to live. The next step is practicing polite declines. When we say no to someone, we're not doing so in a mean way. We're not trying to hurt anybody's feelings. And we can say no in a polite but firm way. We can say, thank you so much for the invitation, but I'm not free. Or I'm honored, but I have other commitments. Right? That's polite and it's firm, and you don't need to give tons of details. You just need to show appreciation while still maintaining your boundaries. The next strategy is the slow yes. So I spoke about this in a video once where it's the quick no and the slow yes. So when somebody asks you to go somewhere, to do something, you can say, thank you so much. Let me check my schedule and get back to you. You don't have to answer on the spot. You can take the time that you need to make a thoughtful decision and reflect if this is the decision you want to make that aligns best with the life you want to live. I think a lot of the time when we say yes to things, it's because we're doing so like right away on the spot. We feel pressure. And know that you don't need to feel that pressure. You can say, let me get back to you. Another important strategy is setting clear boundaries from the start. When you know what your boundaries are and you commit to those boundaries, it makes it so much easier to say no because that boundary is already set in stone. It's a non-negotiable. So, for instance, I don't work Fridays. I don't see clients on Fridays. That's my admin day, that's my video day. And because I know it from the start, and my clients know that that's a non negotiable day, it just makes saying no so much easier. So when they say, oh, can we book on a Friday? It's like, oh, I don't work Fridays. And that's it. And I think it's when we don't have clear boundaries, like when I wasn't sure, oh, what days am I working evenings? What days am I not working evenings? That's when it becomes really difficult to set boundaries and say no. So set clear boundaries from the start of how you want to spend your time and your energy. The fifth strategy is reflecting on trade-offs. Know that when you say yes to something, you're automatically saying no to something else. So before you actually say yes, consider what you're giving up and know what you prioritize. Keep that top of mind because that is what you're going to be putting every single decision against. So if you prioritize family time, then working overtime at your job would be taking away from that. So if you're saying yes to overtime, you're saying no to family time. You need to embrace the power of saying no. No isn't just no, it is about retaking your power. It's about controlling how you live your life. It's about living your life with intention. It's about focusing on what matters most to you. And when you say no to things that just don't serve you, you make room for the things that actually make your life richer and happier and meaningful. And it's uncomfortable. I understand that. You're not used to it. I wasn't used to it at first, and I had a hard time. Like I said, I was a yes girl. But the more you say no and practice it, the better you'll be and the more comfortable you'll be with it. And if your fear is that you'll hurt someone's feeling or you'll feel guilt after it, know that your worst possible scenario won't come true. What I found is people generally respect a no. They get it. We just worry so much that we're going to hurt the other person. But if you're doing so in a tactful way, in a polite way, I think you'll find that it'll turn out much better than you're imagining in your mind. So just practice, practice, practice. That's the only way you'll get comfortable with it. The first truth is that people won't understand. They're not going to understand your way of viewing the world, your way of approaching the world. They're not going to get the whole slow living thing, okay? We live in a society of more. We live in a society of just busyness for busyness sakes, where we feel societal pressures and we feel fear of judgment. And so when you tell people this new approach to life that you have, they're not going to get it at all, like probably at all. And it can be difficult to not have that support from friends, families, coworker, all that. I get it. I was there. But here's the thing. It is not your job to convince them. It is not your job to make them understand. When I started off in this journey and people asked me about slow living, I had a hard time explaining it. I was really at the beginning of my journey and I just couldn't verbalize this new path that I was on. And people questioned it. They didn't get it. And I tried to convince them. I felt like I was shaking them, like, no, I swear, there's a better way of being. Like, hustle culture sucks. Like, this is so much better. And it didn't work. And I felt bitter. And that's what happens when we try and convince someone of something that they don't want to listen to or don't want to understand, is that we can feel bitterness. And so you need to see that it is not your job to make them understand or convince them. Okay? Come on this channel, see other people who are on the same journey as you. Speak your heart out to people who do want to listen, but do not try and convince others. Because when we try and convince others, really what we're trying to do is tell them that their way of viewing the world is wrong. And nobody wants to hear that. So when somebody is super indoctrinated into the idea that you have to hustle to make something of yourself, you have to work hard to the detriment of yourself, and you're saying, no, 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 you're wrong, there's a better way, you're questioning their whole identity, their whole way of being, their whole view of society. And so they're going to not want to listen and they're going to want to argue. And that's okay that they view their world that way, but it's not up to you to change their mind. And when you learn this and you let go, you'll be able to be much better off on your journey because you won't feel weighed down by the assumptions and by the critiques of others, because you are aware that the path that you're on is the right path for you. And when I let go of that, trying to convince others, and instead of just focused on sending my message out into the world to people who do want to listen, like you, it's so much better. And now the people around me truly do listen because they want to understand. And so, and that's great. But just know, people are not going to get it. I get it. Other people who are watching this will get it, but others won't. And so stick to your community as much as possible, because we are here, we are mighty, and we're here for you. You're not alone. It just might feel like it sometimes. The next truth is that you are going to fall back into old habits. Yep. I am 99.9% sure that you are going to fall back into old habits. I can say that with a lot of certainty because, it happens to me even now. Habits are long held, right? They are ingrained in us with regards to like how we grew up, our society. And so it's only normal that they are hard things to shift. It's not an overnight thing to change your habit. It's a lot of work. And so what I hope is that when you do fall into old habits, I want you to show yourself some grace and some self-compassion, and also observe it, learn from it. If you're noticing a specific habit come up quite a bit, question why that is. What changes might you have to make in your life? What is this telling you? And for instance, like one thing I find myself falling into is when I get into a flow state, I will just drive through all of the work. I will not stop. If I'm editing a video, even if I don't like editing, if I get into a flow state, I'm not going to want to stop. I'm going to want to work into the night. Not healthy, not something that I want to do. And so I know this about myself. So about 30 minutes to an hour before the end of my day, I will stop editing because I know that the pressure to continue is too great for me, that I need to put a buffer in there. And so I'll do something else that I am able to like put aside fairly easily. So learn from the old habits that are resurfacing, but do not show yourself too much judgment for it. You're not failing, okay? I know sometimes it can feel like we're failing, but you're not. And know that it's only natural for you to resist change. Change is difficult, and there is comfortability in the familiar, even if the familiar doesn't serve you. So recognize that it is going to take time. You are going to fall back into old habits. It is part of the process. You're on the right path. If you're enjoying this video, please consider subscribing. I'd love to have you as part of the community. All right. Another huge truth, the biggest one for me, honestly, is that you are going to fall into perfectionistic tendencies. I'm going to make a bold assumption here, okay? I think that many people who seek out slow living tend to be high achievers who are burnt out by society. I'm a high achiever. You might consider yourself an overachiever. I consider myself an overachiever a lot before too. Somebody who has a lot of goals but pushes themselves a bit too far. Now I consider myself a high achiever. And so I am somebody who likes to work hard, who has a lot of goals, who reaches for a lot of big dreams. And that's okay. But I don't let myself hustle to get that. That is when you're going into overachiever territory. I am a high achiever. You can be a high achiever and engage in slow living. And the thing is, though, when you're a high achiever and you are goal oriented, you tend to create visions of a future that seem perfect and ideal. And so you might have this ideal version of slow living that you want to live. And I want to tell you, erase that now. That vision does not serve you. That vision that you see in your head of beautiful baked bread and prairie side living, like the YouTube videos or the Pinterest photos, not serving you. Not serving you one bit. Honestly, probably will cause you more stress than anything else. Instead, you have to look at what slow living will look like in your reality. And it'll be different for you than it is for me, than it is for somebody else. So slow living for me is having slow mornings where I only start seeing clients at 10 a.m. Okay? That seems so simple, but it's so perfect for me. Like, you don't know how good that feels to just have a slow morning and only start seeing people at 10 a.m. It means for me going to take a walk in the middle of the day or going to the gym at 2 p.m. It means having all my energy for my daughter in the evenings. That is slow living to me. It is not a certain way of dressing. It is not a certain way of having my house look. It is not a certain way of talking, right? I'm soft to a point, but I'm a bit much. So you have to know that there is no perfect version of slow living. There's only your version. There's only what is meaningful to you. And that is what you should be aiming for. Not what my version is or anybody else. And we can only achieve these things with slow, gradual changes. It's not like a flip of the switch. I think I've said many times in this video, it's a journey. So you need to take this gradually. And gradually is the most sustainable thing that you can do, because when you change things slowly, they're better able to be anchored in and stay. But if you change everything at once, it becomes overwhelming. And so I challenge you to only change a little bit at a time. Slow living is much more sustainable when you approach it in a very gradual way. When you change little thing by little thing and you adapt slowly and you do something different and then you evaluate how that feels for you. I've tried some things out that were recommended in YouTube videos, for instance, and I was like, nope, not for me. And that's okay. You only find out by experimenting, but you can only truly know what works for you and what doesn't work for you when you actually change things slowly, right? You gradually put the things into action. If you found this masterclass helpful, please give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments what your biggest takeaway was. All right, keep living your authentic life. Bye.